You're just joining us now after lunch. We have LBT Innovations on the line. And of course, LBT Innovations improves patient outcomes by making healthcare more efficient. Based in Adelaide, South Australia, the company has a history of developing world-leading products in microbiology automation. Its first product, MicroStreak, was a global first in the automation of culture plate streaking process. We have Brent Barnes, the Managing Director, calling in today, and Brent is a global business executive and medical technology enthusiast. He has broad experience in regulated Class 1, Class 2 and Class 3 medical devices, implantable devices and AI automation in healthcare. And in 2016, he became CEO and Managing Director of LBT. Prior to this, Brent spent 11 years as a senior executive in a variety of roles at Cochlear, the global leader in implantable hearing devices. Great to have you with us today, Brent. Take it away.
Thanks, Laura. Appreciate that kind introduction and welcome everybody. Great to be speaking with everyone from my home office in this funny kind of time we're in. LBT Innovations is a listed company on the Australian Securities Exchange, and we're a company that's really relevant at the moment because our product provides efficiencies in busy clinical laboratories. It's these same clinical labs that everyone's probably quite familiar with at the moment who are doing all of the COVID-19 testing. Now, our product or our technology doesn't automate those tests, the COVID-19 tests, but it's these customers who are under significant pressure to build both capacity and capability to deal with the testing really at the moment, and they're on the front line having a tough time doing that. And I guess what we're seeing is while they're kind of scaling up to do the COVID-19 testing, where we see a lot of the routine medical treatments, all of the non-essential medical treatments being put on hold at the moment, we see a pent-up demand. And once the situation eases with COVID-19, our customers are really going to face a tsunami of backlog tests that are going to hit them, and they're going to be extremely busy again. So it's really in this context and this environment that I wanted to start and open to say that's why we're really relevant. And we certainly believe that as the COVID-19 situation gets through to the other side and when we kind of get back to normal, labs are going to be looking for solutions that give them automation, that deliver cost efficiencies for their lab. And that's where we fit in and why we're so relevant, particularly at this time and as we come through the other side of it. So the normal disclaimers apply being a listed company that people would be familiar with already. I'm going to talk a bit about the market opportunity, then around the product, the value proposition for our customers, and then finally shifting gears and wrapping up and then concluding the meeting. So this is our instrument and our product. We call it APAS, the Automated Plate Assessment System. And what this instrument does is it automates culture plate reading. To give you a practical example of kind of what that terminology means is if one thinks they have a urinary tract infection, that urine specimen is taken and it's sent to one of these labs doing all these kind of tests, COVID-19 tests. First part of the workflow was putting the specimen onto a plate. It's then incubated for a number of hours. And following incubation, you have a microbiologist sitting at a workbench doing a visual assessment. And it's that visual assessment and that reading and interpretation that we've been able to automate. And we've been able to automate that using an AI or machine learning technology capability. Really the benefits for our customers is that we're able to interpret what's on that plate, similar to what a microbiologist does, and remove all those negative plates out of the workflow. There is no other technology that does what we do. And unlike many other AI kind of technology startup companies, our technology is patent protected. We've gone through and de-risked and spent many millions of dollars getting the regulatory clearances and going through the clinical trials. And we're at a stage now where we have a product and we're focusing on 4 core markets that I'll talk about a little bit later on. Going back to our customers, these couple of pictures really kind of visualize, firstly, what an agar plate is. That's the picture on the left-hand side. And then on the right-hand side, you have an image of a microbiologist sitting at a workbench. And this is what we see typically in laboratories all around the world. And they've got a stack of plates on the left-hand side there, and they take the lid off and they do their assessment, and they key in the results into the computer system. So that's kind of visualizing the manual process that currently exists to what our product does, which automates that manual step. Kind of looking at microbiologists as a profession, there's not enough new microbiologists coming through our educational systems. So what that means is that they're very much in high demand. A really interesting stat on this page, I think, is that in the US, at any one time, 9% of microbiology jobs are vacant. And when you look at the broad range of tasks that they do, it's not a great utilization of their core skills to be sitting at a workbench looking and reading plates, where depending on whether it's a urine culture, where anywhere between 60 to 80% are negative, or they're looking at infection control cultures, where you're going to have negative rates of over 95%. That's not a great utilization of their time. And that's where when we kind of started developing this technology 10 years ago, this is where we saw a real opportunity to provide automation within a discipline that has not had a lot of innovation for a long, long time. And the market opportunity that exists for the technology is a large one when you look at it from a global perspective. What we've done is that we've looked at the addressable market and we've tried to segment that, really focusing on those customers that have the throughput and have the scale and the size to deliver a payback with kind of that 2 to 3 year time period. And so that's kind of how this segmentation works. It's not a hard or a fast rule. In fact, we're finding that we have many labs in that smaller section looking for automation solutions as well, just because they can't find those skilled resources, like I mentioned before. So it's a large global market opportunity that exists for our technology. And what we've been busy doing really over the last 18 months is focusing on getting the regulatory clearances required to have our product for sale and marketed in really 4 countries. We're a small company. We can't go everywhere at once. So we launched the product here in Australia. It's a small market, but it's a market that we understand very well, and it's easy to service. And obviously we're close to our customers being in this target market. And so we clearly have, from a regulatory perspective, the TGA listing, and our first key opinion leader reference site, St Vincent's Hospital in Melbourne, has subsequently purchased an instrument, which is really great. Kind of shifting gears and moving to Europe, we're focusing on the UK and in Germany. We've got a Centre of Excellence reference site in Cologne, Germany. Labor Wispelinghof is the single largest laboratory in Germany and one of the largest labs in all of Europe, a really prestigious laboratory headquartered in Cologne, Germany. Dr. Wispelinghof has visited Australia a number of times and is working with us, and I've had him actually kind of present to many shareholders and investors at various points of time. He's a big advocate for the technology, and in fact, he's also purchased an instrument, which is the first sale that we were able to achieve in Europe last year. We also have a European-based sales executive that's focusing on generating leads and working those opportunities within the market. From a US perspective, the US is the single largest market globally for us, with a target lab of around 1,500 labs and a really great opportunity. We have FDA clearance. That's really, really important. We have to go through a de novo submission. A de novo means there's no predicate indication for the automated assessment of culture plates. We led the way, and we still remain as the only product within the US and in fact globally that automates culture plate reading. We've got a US-based sales executive that started with us in January, and he's busy following up the many leads that we started. So over 220 leads is an outcome of a call center initiative that we started about 12 months ago. So all the way from Australia, our challenge is, well, how do we identify the hospitals and the various people and stakeholders within those hospitals to educate them, to let them know that APAS exists? Well, we did an outbound call generation, lead generation, where we scripted a call and we had a call center based in the US do that work for us. And so we've done some of that early heavy lifting, if you like, to support the commercialization of our product and our technology. Really the heart of the instrument, and I don't want to dumb down the instrument at all, but the real innovation lies with what we call an analysis module. This is the software that we've developed and trained an algorithm to interpret what's on the plate. And that's really the core invention, and that's the core unique product, if you like, that nobody else globally has been able to do. And it's an Australian invention. And as I mentioned, we have patent protection on the algorithm itself, the imaging platform, the lighting, and the calibration tools. So this is a protected innovation that we've been able to bring to the market. And for these labs and for our customers, what it means is that they can rely on the fact that it's accurate. We've extensively proven that through clinical trials. We're able to take a photo, we're able to interpret and manage all of these plates in a way that's 3 times faster than that of a manual plate read. And we've been able to get through all the regulatory barriers and the regulatory clearances from a global perspective, whereby we now have a product that's available for sale in those 4 key countries that I spoke about. Nobody can do what we do. And when you look at this slide and when you look at the workflow, we're automating a really unique part of the workflow. There are other technologies that automate that first part of the workflow. In fact, that was our founding product, putting a specimen onto a plate and streaking it. That's a very mechanical activity, and in many labs that can't warrant the cost for an instrument and automation, they have a technician to do that activity for them. The really key part here is that, and it's tied into all the reimbursement systems around the world, is that you need to have a qualified microbiologist perform your culture plate reads. It's a task that needs to be done by a scientist. What we've been able to do is train an algorithm to interpret those culture plates and remove all those negatives out of the workflow, have that valuable information passed to the lab information management system, which leaves just the positive plates for the microbiologist to do their IDAST work, which is the antibiotic recommendations that ultimately fix the infection or for the patient. So building on the value proposition that exists, what this diagram shows is that when you don't have any APAS, you're obviously manually reviewing all of your culture plates. These analysis modules, or AMs, as we call them, are able to automatically review urine, automatically review MRSA. The more AMs that we have as a company and that we have with APAS independence, the greater the value proposition for these labs, and actually the increased market opportunity will exist for us. And it's all about increasing the market opportunity. And that's where we have a busy team based in Adelaide, highly trained specialists in the area of science, AI, and software engineering that are bringing all of these things together, developing these algorithms. And it's really difficult to bring that science and technology disciplines together. And we've been unique and successful in being able to do that. And so we have the urine FDA cleared. We submitted the MRSA. This is for staph identification. This is a routine swab that happens in many, many labs and hospitals all around the world. So we submitted that to the US FDA last month, actually. So that's on track, and we expect to have that cleared early in the second half of this year. But without going through all of them, the point here is that there are a number of modules or analysis modules that we have in the pipeline. And the more and more that we create, the greater the clinical utility. But we started with those that have the highest volume. So when you look at the urine and MRSA and you bundle those two modules together, really we're automating anywhere between 50 to 70% of specimens that are going through that culture plate workflow that I outlined. So if you look at kind of where we've come from and where we are today and what the value proposition means for shareholders, it's a really compelling one. We started this journey in 2010. We've been at this for 10 years. We've shifted from inventing a unique capability, which no one else has been able to do, and that's the analysis modules and the software. We then needed to build the platform or the infrastructure, which is the instrument itself, the APAS independence. We've done all of that. We've kind of got our key opinion leaders in place from a global perspective, being really sharp and nimble and focused with respect to our commercialization plans. And here we are in 2020, where yes, we've had this COVID-19 situation, but coming through the end of that, we're going to have a platform technology which we believe is going to be in even greater demand by these labs all around the world. Our end goal and our end strategy is not to build out a sales force and a service organization in all of these countries. It's about appointing a distributor. And we did announce last year that we have shipped an instrument to a US-based distributor. It's not saying that they will distribute necessarily in the US, but the company is headquartered there. And we're in really good discussions with them and have been for some time, I might add. But those discussions continue even during this crisis situation. And we expect a distributor appointment to still be on track within this 2020 time horizon. The sales model and the market opportunity are kind of outlined here. So the instrument itself is $300,000 US, and the analysis module, there's a range there between $20,000 to $40,000, and that's really dependent upon the number of modules that you have. So that's a reoccurring annual software license. You can't opt in or opt out of that license. So once you don't pay that annual fee, well, then the instrument's not going to work as you expect it to. We sell the instrument typically in a 5-year type of service contract. The useful life of the instrument, at least that we've developed it for, is 7 years. When we talk with our customers, typically they look within that 5 to 7 year time horizon. So that kind of outlines the revenue opportunity that exists. And then when you look at just those 4 countries that I mentioned previously, we're looking at an addressable market opportunity of approximately 2,000 labs. And then if you just do some of the basic sums there and looking at the market penetration over a period of time, it just gives you an idea of the quantum that's available with respect to what the opportunity is in front of us. And we thought rather, look, we're early stage of the sales cycle with key opinion leaders set up, and we've made a couple of sales already. We're not in a position to put out forward-looking forecasts at this time. The sales cycle is about a 12-month sales cycle, sometimes a little bit longer, but we thought it would be helpful to give an example of a couple of comparative products. These are products that are in the space within that workflow that I've spoken about. So the first is the MALDI-TOF. This is, so for all of those positive plates that APAS identifies, the MALDI-TOF does a positive identification of the specific bacteria. Now that was launched in 2004. And they've got globally somewhere around 1,500 units, and it took them about 10 years to get to that particular point of penetration. What was really important and interesting around that particular data point is the fact that they were not able to get FDA clearance early on. And you can see that, so they sold predominantly in Europe, but then when they got the FDA clearance, it really skyrocketed from a sales perspective. Comparatively to us, we've already got the FDA clearance in place, and we've got the CE marking, so we're able to be selling in those core growth markets early on. The second example is our founding product that we licensed to a large French diagnostic company, bioMérieux. And so they distributed that product for us on a global basis. And over around about 5.5 years, they were able to generate about 500 units of placement. So you can see the key here, the correlation between getting that early access in the markets I've described, and then importantly, getting a distributor in place, which is in the horizon of the 2020 calendar year. That's an important catalyst to really create scale from a sales perspective. Part of what we've really focused on doing over the last 2 years is building internal capability around this machine learning process. I mentioned the key disciplines that we have: science, AI, software engineering, and of course, underpinning all of that is the important regulatory context and the clinical applications and the clinical validation, I should say, that is required in terms of bringing this technology to the clinical market. And so we've been able to build in a lot of this internal capacity and capability within the organisation. So that's core to what we do. We have a diverse board. I won't go through myself, but Kate's been chairman for a couple of years now and has been on the board really as a founding board member. So some really longevity there. Caroline and Simon are both US based, which is really valuable, especially as we look to target that US market. And Damien's based in Melbourne. And so we have a really nice cross-functional mixture of capability at a board level. We announced our 4C, or our quarterly, earlier this week, where we said we've got a current cash position of $6.8 million. We did raise $5 million about 12 months ago. And you can see the graph there with respect to the share price and the volume that we've got. So market cap of around 25 million Australian dollars, and about 235 million shares on offer. So still a fairly small number of shares on offer. We do have a loan facility that's with the South Australian government. That's that SAFA loan facility. We've drawn down 2.5 million already from that particular low interest rate term facility. So that was a particular grant that we received from the South Australian government. So in summary, and when you're considering LBT as an investment value proposition, one of the things that we've done, and as we stand today, is that we've de-risked all of some of the challenges that many companies face as they're developing kind of new technology. We've got the regulatory clearances already in place. We've done the clinical validation. A 10,000 patient clinical trial is what we had to go through, and we submitted those results to the US FDA. So that's all done. The instrument works. So there's no question about that. We have a large global market. We've done a lot of the heavy lifting really over the last 12 to 18 months around getting key opinion leaders set up. We've got them publishing data for us, and it's obviously all very much positive. And when we're looking at 2020, we're really launched and pivoting to really grow and establish that foundational footprint by establishing global distributors, making some early sales along the way, and continuing this operational momentum as we continue to deliver to the market new analysis modules, which only expands the clinical utility of the instrument. So I'd like to thank you for your attention and open up to question and answers if we have time.
Thanks very much, Brent. That was super comprehensive. We do have a couple of questions for you. Obviously, you've done the trials, you've got the regulatory approvals, and you've got the distributors in the pipeline. We have a question from Peter. How many sales does LBT need to get break even?
Yeah, look, it's a really good question, and I guess it's a hard one for me to answer. So we've disclosed from a sales perspective that we do expect to generate some sales this year, even in light of the COVID-19 situation. It's definitely had an impact in terms of the length of time that we expect that sales process to occur in the short term. But in the long term, we're still active in the market, trying to generate those sales, and we believe that we'll still be able to generate some of those within this calendar year timeframe. But look, we haven't put forward and opened up to the market forward-looking statements around our sales and break-even points at this time.
Mm-hmm. Peter was also wondering, what is the monthly cash burn for the company?
Yeah, so $1.5 million is our burn rate. We announced during our quarterly meeting this week that we have initiated some cost reduction programs. Clearly, our global sales and marketing and travel expenditure that we would have otherwise normally invested in and attendance at some large conferences just aren't going to happen. So we're going to get some cost savings that will extend our runway there. The board has taken a 20% salary or fee cut in the immediate term as a response to that as well. So current monthly burn rate has been about $1.5 million. We expect that probably for the next quarter, but directionally looking to reduce that on a go-forward basis.
And how are the discussions progressing with distributors? You did mention in the presentation that you're focused on a US distributor, but they won't just be focused on the US market as such. They'll be looking elsewhere too. So maybe if you can shed some more light on the distributor discussions that you're having right now.
Yeah, distributors, look, we've been in discussions for some time, and I gave direction that we expect distributors to be, it won't be a single global distributor. It's likely to be a geographical kind of Europe and then the US, or vice versa. We haven't kind of outlined those specific plans yet. I think the key thing is that we have been working with a potential distributor, and we announced last year that we shipped it to their headquarters that's based in the US. They've provided some feedback, which has been positive. We've been working with them more on how the products kind of work as a complementary product within their existing portfolio of products. I did mention on yesterday's quarterly call that probably had COVID-19 not hit, we would have had a distributor signed by now. So importantly, I want the message for shareholders to understand is that the strategic discussions and the intent remain as they have been. That is unchanged. But we have been impacted in the short term just by our potential distributor looking to reprioritize to work with customer demands as well as obviously the safety and well-being of their employees.
Okay, yeah, so impacted for the quarter potentially, but still on track to deliver on the strategic goals.
Correct.
And Brent, lastly, what impact did the ECC MID conference cancellation have broadly on the company?
It's hard to quantify the impact. ECMED is the largest conference, the microbiology conference of the year, is in Europe, is in Paris earlier this month. Look, there's different platforms that the organisers are looking to use to get the data. We had some abstracts by our key opinion leaders that were accepted. And the good news is that pleasingly that data and those key opinion leaders will still publish the data, but it's likely to be in the second half of the year. So look, I think in many ways we save a lot of money by not attending that conference. Clearly we're not reaching the same group of people that we would have otherwise been able to engage with, but balancing that off with a number of leads that we've got, you look at we have 2 salespeople, one in Europe and one in the US, and you look at the opportunity that exists. That ratio of leads to salespeople is still one where they're very busy at the moment. So yeah, we've missed some opportunities with the fact that that conference is cancelled, but there are other conferences that are looking like they're still going to be going ahead in the second half of the year. And perhaps that might mean that we'll see a greater attendance at those conferences, which means we can make up some of that lost opportunity perhaps that existed here in April.
Yeah, well, a mislead somewhere, but you can gain them elsewhere, like on virtual conferences, hey?
That's right, like this one, absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on the line, Brent. We might let you attend to your dog. I think he might be barking in the background.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, yes.
No worries at all. It's what we have to do during COVID, isn't it? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon. Next up, we do have Emerald Clinics, and Emerald is a clinical services and healthcare technology company focused on providing provision of care for patients clinically determined to have exhausted conventional therapies, which sounds very exciting. We'll be back in about 5 minutes' time with that. Stay tuned.